Investigating leaks of 2 cubic feet per second near the junction of the downstream slope of the embankment and the right abutment. If it worsens, we'll advise you. Over.
All right, the world is a circle. Don Ellis has just called me on the mobile unit, and he says it apparently is going to be quite a serious problem. So you people on the North Fork and the South Fork of the Teton Rivers, inflate your rafts.
I don't think she's going to hold with these rocks. She appears to be widening.
Enlargement of the fingertips.
All right, I'm going to interrupt right here and put Don Ellis in the KRXK mobile unit on.
All right, thank you very much, Lee Savage. We do have a very, very serious problem here at the Teton Dam.
Hans, this is 056. Abandoned attempt to retrieve Cat 2. Repeat, abandoned attempt and evacuate the area immediately.
As I sit here and watch, you see it caving. It's just coming apart.
At 11:57 a.m. on June 5th, 1976, the Teton Dam collapsed, flooding homes and farms in the upper Snake River Valley with 80 billion gallons of water. Here are recollections of how the people faced that disaster and rebuilt their lives.
And the water in monumental, holy, great. What can I say? People downstream better get out. People downstream better get out.
A young fellow pulled me off and said the Teton Dam had broken. I thought he was just kind of joking, so I laughed about it. Went on down to the florist and bought a tree and took it up and planted it. And then some of my neighbors said that we ought to turn on the radio because it really had happened.
And then when he said the Teton Dam had broke, we had about an hour to clear town. I told him it was a bunch of baloney.
Report from an aircraft in the vicinity of Sugar City. The wall of water is approximately 5 to 6 miles wide and is moving buildings and everything out of its way. Cattle in the front that don't have a chance, and suggests that all the people that are anywhere near the river at all that can get out of the way.
Though the warnings came late, and it was difficult to convince many people the dam indeed had burst, the timing of the flood in the middle of the day prevented mass deaths, and most residents were evacuated to higher ground where they watched the eerie occurrence of houses and belongings floating away.
Well, it was gushing, and it was so high, it was coming in, I would say probably 5 to 8 feet high, and it was traveling fast. And in head of it was just gusts of dirt billowing up high as it was pushing this land, the soil, in head of it. And it was traveling, I'll tell you. And there was cattle that was swimming. There was trailer houses floating. There was homes, brick homes floating. We watched it come up above.
We got up on the roof of our house to see what was happening, and we could see the water coming from Sugar City this direction. It had a big dust in front of it. And we just couldn't believe the speed of the water coming in. It seemed like the water would be around those houses about 30 seconds before the house would start to move. And the widow lady lived a little below me up there, and we stood there and watched her house, and it was like somebody was driving it. It just raised up off the foundation and come out onto the street. made a right-hand turn, went part of a block down the street, then kind of made a 45-degree angle left-hand turn and went across the park and landed about a block and a half away from where it
Some 220,000 acre-feet of water roared through the huge gouge of the Teton Dam that unforgettable Saturday morning. The water spread its destruction as fast as a mile a minute in the areas of Wilford and Sugar City. As it cut a swath of destruction 7 miles wide, the water's level reached from 8 to 10 feet in height. The results? Over $1 billion worth of damage. Destruction to 4,000 homes, wiping out 250 businesses and 3,500 farm buildings. 11 human deaths. The killing of 13,000 head of livestock and stripping topsoil from 100,000 acres of rich farmland. As the helpless Idahoans watched their homes, businesses, and animals destroyed before their eyes, their reactions varied.
It came in from the northeast corner. My home is 2 blocks in from the area right over here, across the street, this lovely brick home that used to be. We watched it come in. First reaction was, it's taking our business first. We have the drive-in theater out here, and it swept our drive-in theater out, washed us out completely, and in less than a minute and a half, it got our home.
You could see the cattle trying to get away from it. We watched one bunch of cattle that had run away from the water and then turned right around and run right back into it.
With roads crumbled, telephone and power service to the area knocked out, and debris spread everywhere, the dazed residents of 6 towns slowly moved back to survey the damage.
By no stretch of the imagination could the flood confront us with the kinds of things we were seeing. As we came upon the town, there were several major fires burning. Hundreds of buildings were completely demolished. Huge logs weighing up to 5 or 10 tons moved at 12, 15 miles an hour, so that when they hit a building, it simply exploded the building.
Well, the whole town is more or less devastated. In the Sugar City, Wilford area, they're just as bad. If you were alone in the clean, it'd be a little bit tough to face up to, but I have a lot of good neighbors. And the whole town's in the same boat, so there's really not much any one of us can say other than just dig in and dig out.
Though stunned, the people below the Teton Dam area weren't down and out, not yet. As the floodwaters began to recede and they started to assess the massive damage, relief efforts were already underway. The Idaho State Police, acting under the governor's office, moved in to control traffic in and out of roads not destroyed by the flood. The LDS Church and the Red Cross set up relief headquarters on the Ricks College campus in Rexburg. Local LDS wards had already assessed conditions of people within their boundaries, and residents with damaged or destroyed homes headed for Ricks College to await food, clothing, and bed. The church and Red Cross were rushing food and supplies into the stricken area even before the end of the day. Simultaneously, vital services had to be restored. Railroad lines had to be repaired, as well as electric power and phone service that had been destroyed. As the first relief efforts began, the power company was assembling the largest armada of service crews ever, what amounted to mobilization of half of the company's service crews. They began rolling into the flood-devastated area shortly after dawn of the next day.
We were in Rexburg with, as I remember, 47 line crews shortly after dawn. We had at least 400 men working. As the mayor later told me, it seemed there was a line crew in every corner. I don't know how much it meant to those people as they were coming back for their first view of their flooded homes.
Massive flood debris at the power company's Rexburg service center was the major obstacle to restoring electric power that had to be overcome first.
Our service center was full of logs, debris, dead cattle, and a huge oil tank that had been carried down by the flooding, burning approximately 40 yards from the building. The yard had timber and debris at least 10 to 12 feet deep and stretched across our property and into the railroad tracks over into the sawmill area. The substation itself was jammed with hundreds of heavy timber logs and dead cattle rammed into the transformers and oil switches, and the fence was completely obliterated. Prashant and his folks moved in and began pulling logs and debris out, and restoring the fence, drying the relays. Amazingly enough, by the end of the day, the transformer was energized and it held.
Many local crew supervisors and members worked around the clock during the first few days to restore vital power service, even though taking no time at all to return to their own flooded and destroyed homes. Power service was re-established to 3,000 customers and hookups established for an additional 1,054 residents whose homes were destroyed. This took place as crews feverishly put in 1,000 poles and 200 miles of conductor wire during 14 exhaustive days of relief efforts. More than 70,000 man-hours were worked before the power company had restored 90% of the service to the valley. From the LDS Church Relief Headquarters at Ricks College, the plucky local residents headed out each day to begin the slow, painstaking task of digging out of all the rubble.
The mud wasn't a normal kind of mud. It was a greasy mud. It almost felt like it had graphite in it. It permeated everything, even behind the plaster walls, in the plumbing and all of our wiring ducts. It permeated the clothing and the storage foods and every sort of thing that it covered in the homes.
The Idaho National Guard and State Police continued their ever-vigilant job of monitoring traffic in and out of the areas as crews worked to repair major road damage and other communication and transportation facilities. Mopping up began around the Teton Dam as federal scientists, engineers, and Bureau of Reclamation officials puzzled over the collapse of the 305-foot-high, 3,200-foot-wide structure, which had been completed only 8 months earlier. The dam's reservoir was still being filled on the morning of June 5th when the dam failed. This region, the Snake River Plain, was first settled by Mormon pioneers in the 1870s. Those first settlers found a harsh land with cold winters and searing summers, but the soil was fertile mountain loam, which when irrigated could produce bountiful crops. So an agricultural economy grew up which depended on vital irrigation water. Farmers formed irrigation districts to build canals and dig wells to water their crops. Even in the 1930s, farmers talked about the possibility of damming the Teton River to store irrigation water. It wasn't until 1961, after years of studies by government agencies, that plans for a major dam on the Teton were announced. When bids were first taken on the dam in 1971, lawsuits by environmentalists and other groups dragged the initial planning on and on. Construction began in 1972 on the controversial project, but concerns over its geological structure led to the most complex grouting program the Bureau of Reclamation engaged in for any dam in their history, involving more than 575,266 cubic feet of cement. From the time the dam began to fill with water in October of 1975, the Bureau was plagued with continuing fissure problems in the right abutment.
Right here. Hey, Carl, and the wall is coming here. Let's see. You got some gals with you? There's some right there. They'll go with you.
The scars of the catastrophe will remain for a long time. But for Idahoans, the cleanup was foremost in their minds, and help poured in from even wider areas. LDS church member volunteers from Utah and Idaho gave more than 1 million man-hours to help the stricken area in cleanup projects. Slowly and surely, the debris and devastation was sorted out. To be sure, it didn't alter the fact that many families had their homes completely destroyed and would have to begin again from scratch. Rebuild. This would be a long, hard process. But as the tremendous efforts of restoring the residents to their homes, the reconstruction of roads, the restoration of power, the town of Rexburg started to look again like a real city. The people could reflect on how their lives had been completely changed by that one devastating event. Recollections of disaster. But a realization that man must work hard and give his best efforts for the service to others. We are reminded that all men are fallible, that no matter what we conquer, nature's strength and magnitude, we can always fail. But even so, man will always have the will to survive, to build, to master.
Saturday morning, I'm going away with my friends. Will Saturday spend till the end of the day? Just lying by friends, with secrets to tell in that Saturday spend. And then we'll move on, but we will remember long after Saturday's gone.
Some of them have indicated that they may leave, but I think that you'll find that most of these people will rebuild over a short period of time, and that Rexburg will again be a delightful place to live.
The best thing that comes out of this is the closeness of people in a community. People that really weren't all that friendly before, and really maybe on different social levels, are now working together.
You know, for me, the impact of the Teton Dam disaster will never end. Well, nor do I want it to ever end. The magnificence of those people caught up in that flood, particularly the greatness of the power company people who were hit by it. I felt like I was walking among tall timber.
Of course we're going to rebuild. But while we're rebuilding the houses and the roads and all that has been destroyed partially or totally, we're going to rebuild our own lives too.